Mom's coming to stay with us starting tomorrow.
What? Is she staying for a while?
No, it's not just a stay. We're going to live together from now on. We're moving in together. We decided last night after a discussion.
Why would you make such an important decision on your own? What about the rooms? One is our bedroom, one is planned for the kids' room, and one is my office. There's no room left.
Well, obviously, we'll clear up your office. Get your room cleared out by tomorrow. I pay the rent here, $3,000 a month, so that's an order. My husband, John, decided to move his mother in with us, asserting his authority because he pays the rent. Our marriage couldn't survive this, and we ended up divorcing. But just divorcing wasn't the end of it, he kicked me out of the house. This house was originally my family home. Unforgivable. I called my dad, Matthew, to take care of my ex-husband. Later, we prepared a rental agreement for my ex-husband to continue living in my family home. When I visited John with the contract, he was surprised.
Hey, this is wrong. The rent's listed as $30,000.
What? The rent is $30,000, that's correct.
You're just trying to drive us out with this high rent. But this is obviously way above market rates. This contract is invalid. Don't play games, just bring a proper contract.
He thought he had seen through my plan, looking triumphant. Unfortunately for him, the contract was legitimate. I'm Ava. At 31, I run a small apparel shop. People often imagine entrepreneurs as wealthy, but that's not always the case. My shop is a small one, nestled at the edge of town. Rather than attracting crowds, it thrives thanks to the regulars from the neighborhood. It's very homey, and nobody minds when I bring my newborn daughter, Riley, with me. In fact, she's become the store's little idol, with staff vying to take care of her and customers coming just to see her. I love the warm atmosphere of my shop and have no desire to expand or increase sales. I'm quite content. In contrast to my laid-back nature, my husband John is all about results. Our contrasting personalities might seem odd for a marriage, but they actually worked well together.
Hey, aren't we supposed to go out this afternoon? You're leisurely folding laundry and watching TV. Are you sure you can get everything done in time?
Oh, you're always in such a hurry. It's just a casual outing, a little delay won't hurt, right?
You're still so relaxed. What else needs to be done? Could you pack Riley's things in her usual bag?
Fine. John grumbled but went to get our daughter's bag while I chuckled watching his back. He's all about efficiency at home. So, when I take my time with tasks, my husband, impatient, starts to help me out. He thinks he's helping because I'm slow, but really, I'm the one controlling the situation. His focus on results and efficiency probably comes from his job as a system engineer. Always conscious of outcomes and intolerant of even minor mistakes. It's fine for our married life, but I doubt we could work together. If John were to collaborate with someone, my dad would be a far better fit. My dad's been all about cars his whole life and owns a modest building in the heart of the city. When we went for our marriage meeting, John and Dad ended up talking more about work than our wedding. It was 3 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
Dad, I've brought John with me.
Oh, just a second. When we arrived at the house, my father was covered in grease, working on a car. John was looking around curiously. This was his first visit to my family home, which serves both as a garage and a residence. The property, slightly larger than usual, had cars lined up for sale, with a 2-story building on it. The first floor was an office and a simple garage, and the living space was upstairs. My mom's inside the house, so let's go up first. Hey, hold on a second. I'm almost done. Dad wiped his hands with a black towel and walked towards us at the entrance of the garage. He probably didn't want to be the last one to enter the house. The house's entrance was at the back of the building, so we stepped outside first. Once outside, the cars lined up for sale caught our eye again. This is amazing. Right in the middle of the city, owning such a fancy car dealership. I heard the land and building were bought by you, right? Wow, that must have taken a lot of hard work and effort.
Well, not really. I just loved cars and ended up doing this. The land and building weren't as expensive back when I bought them. Still, that's impressive. Have things changed much since then? Yeah, lately, I've been selling more cars for display. I understand the desire to admire old cars with good designs, but buying a broken car that doesn't run for a high price is something I couldn't have imagined in my youth. Changes in consumer needs, huh? Any impact from laws or regulations? Recently, there have been changes in load limits. The rules keep getting tweaked, so it's always a bit of a hassle. Okay then.
John, with his system engineer's inquisitive nature, started grilling my father with questions. But Dad didn't mind. He responded as if he was dealing with a customer. He seemed to have slipped into work mode. Neither my mom nor I knew much about cars, so it was nice to see someone take such interest. I knew once these two got going, they wouldn't stop. Leaving them engrossed in their conversation, I climbed the stairs at the back of the building and entered the house alone. I explained the situation to my mom and we peeked out the window at the two of them. Watching Dad and John talk so seriously, my mom and I were both amazed. By the way, the place we live in now is the residential space above the car dealership where my father worked. Recently, Matthew turned 60 and decided to close the dealership and move to the countryside. After 40 years of dedicated work in the city, he wanted a more relaxed life with my mom. He was successful with the dealership, so he had enough money for a sort of early retirement. When Dad decided to move, the family home became vacant. That's when he suggested that we move in.
Dad's not using that house, so he said we could live there. He's not gonna sell it or rent it out. Dad thinks dealing with the house is a hassle. If he sells it, he'd have to demolish the old building, and renting it out means a lot of management. So he said if we want to use it, we should. So, are you saying you're gonna inherit the house and land? Sort of. The formalities of a gift are a hassle, so it's almost like a verbal agreement. After 40 years of non-stop work, he just doesn't want any more trouble. I see. Maybe he's lending it to us so it doesn't seem like he's doing estate planning too early, to avoid making us feel uncomfortable. So, how much is the rent? Rent? Oh, about $3,000, I guess. That's a fair amount. But for that location, with a 3-bedroom living space, $3,000 is reasonable, maybe even a bit cheap. Considering your father's generosity, and it being closer to our workplaces, and with Riley being born, let's go for it.
Hearing the rent was $3,000, John seemed a bit hesitant, but he decided to move to my family home. John is a results-oriented person, so his pride comes as a package deal. I was worried he might refuse to move into my parents' nice home, thinking it would be like relying on them, but I was relieved when he agreed. However, he did set one condition.
We'll move, but I'll pay the $3,000 rent myself. Huh? Sure, that's fine.
It seems John couldn't stand the thought of just living off my parents. Despite sharing a budget, he insisted on paying the rent himself. Pride can be such a hassle. Thus, we ended up living right in the middle of the city, which made life much more convenient. I thought we were set for a comfortable life. But living in my family home soon presented a new problem. After moving in, John's mother, Lucy, began visiting often, sometimes staying overnight. It's natural for a mother-in-law to be curious about her son's new home, so I welcomed her. However, her visits became so frequent, almost every week, that I decided to subtly check with her.
Lately, you've been visiting every week and going out on your own. Would you like to go out with us next time? No need to worry about me. I'm just here to see theater plays. I wouldn't want to drag you two along.
I wished Lucy would be a bit more considerate. It's exhausting having her over so often, even if she is my mother-in-law. Plus, she seems to use our home as a hotel, as the theater with her favorite actors is nearby.
Really, don't worry about me.
She even helped herself to my pudding from the fridge after her bath. Just a little consideration would be nice. If her visits were about caring for John or seeing her granddaughter, Riley, I could understand. But staying with us just to see her favorite theater actors doesn't sit well with me. I brought this up to John, but his response was unhelpful.
She helps with the chores and laundry, right? Maybe she's just supporting you, what with work and childcare. What's the problem with her watching plays in her free time? Well, yes, I appreciate her help, but her frequent visits are a bit overwhelming. Overwhelmed by help? Don't say nonsensical things. If you have complaints about my mom, make sure you're perfect in household, childcare, and work, so no one can criticize you.
John, thinking I was being unreasonable, didn't even look at me, focusing on his phone screen. He probably meant that I should produce results if I wanted my demands met. That might be the right answer for work. But this is about family relationships, and I don't think those rules apply here. It seemed I couldn't expect John to be on my side. But I wasn't out of options. I had a strong ally. Soon after, Lucy stopped visiting abruptly.
Lately, Mom hasn't been coming over. Wonder why? Yeah, I wonder.
I replied to John's question with a smile. Lucy stopped coming because my father-in-law had a word with her. He's a kind man, so I explained the situation over the phone and asked for his help. John seems unaware of this, meaning my father-in-law kept our conversation a secret. This way, there's no strain between John and me. I'm grateful to my father-in-law. Half a year after this minor incident, my father-in-law passed away in a work accident. In the 3 years since I married John, my father-in-law had often helped me through troubles with John and Lucy. My father-in-law was just over 60, and I had planned to repay his kindness many times over. At the funeral, I was overwhelmed with grief and regret as I paid my respects. After the funeral, Riley and I returned home first, while John stayed overnight at his parents' house. The next night, when John came home, he hurled unbelievable words at me, still grieving.
Mom's coming to stay from tomorrow. Is everything okay at her place? She said she'll sort things out gradually. So, for a while, I'll be commuting to our family home. What? Commuting? What do you mean? Is your mom not just staying for a night but for a while? No, we're going to live together. We're moving in together. We decided last night.
I felt dizzy hearing my husband John's words. I had always avoided confronting his prideful and unyielding nature, fearing clashes. So, I navigated through our relationship by subtly guiding his thoughts and actions. But with my mother-in-law moving in tomorrow, there won't be time for avoiding conflicts or influencing decisions.
What? Why would you decide such a crucial thing on your own? And just overnight without consulting me? You want to leave my mom alone? Lucy is only 60, right? She's still healthy. I think it's too soon for her to move in with us. If we're gonna live together, sooner is better, right? You're slow with household chores and childcare. Wouldn't you be glad for the help?
Again, John's negative traits were showing. Sure, Lucy would help around the house. But what about my feelings? John seems to only consider tangible outcomes like household tasks and disregards my emotions, which are less visible and abstract. To convince him, I need to present clear and tangible issues.
What about the rooms? One is our bedroom, one we planned for Riley's room, and one is my office. There's no room left.
Well, obviously, we'll clear out your office. Get it ready by tomorrow.
I pay the rent, $3,000 a month.
That's an order. Despite the ongoing discussion, John abruptly went to take a bath. My desperate resistance seemed futile. I went to my office, deciding to at least prepare a place for Lucy to sleep the next day. The next day, Lucy arrived, dragging a large suitcase.
It's usually just a bag, so it's no big deal. But with all this luggage, it's quite a trip.
John was at work, so I greeted her alone at the door. The suitcase must have been quite a burden. Lucy was sweating slightly and looked tired. But there was no hint of sadness in her face, hard to believe just days after my father-in-law's funeral.
What? You haven't cleared the room yet?
I'm sorry, I was only told last night. I'll clear it out gradually.
Hurry up, please. And since I mentioned being tired, you should offer me some tea without being asked. You're not very thoughtful.
Oh, sorry. I'll get it right away. This was going to be challenging. The thought of facing this every day weighed heavily on me. But this was just the beginning. That night, when John came home and we were having dinner, Lucy started attacking me more directly.
It's been half a year since I last visited this house. Never thought I'd be coming to stay like this.
By the way, why did you suddenly stop coming? Your father told me off. Said I shouldn't visit John's place too often. It might bother Ava.
Typical of Dad, always considerate. But there was no need for him to worry about us.
Right.
But it wasn't Dad being considerate. Ava asked him to tell me. She said I was a bother and wanted him to warn me off. Really?
Suddenly, a sharp comment was thrown at me, and I froze, my fork still holding a piece of food. True, I had sought my father-in-law's help. But I never put it in such a negative way. I just asked if she could reduce her visits. Lucy exaggerated the story to make herself seem like the victim.
You said that to her?
Sorry about that, Ava.
I didn't know you were so bothered by it. Now that we're going to be living together all the time, is that going to be okay?
Yes. Lucy's face was smiling, but her eyes clearly showed anger. She seemed upset about being ratted out to her husband. Her eyes also seemed to be warning me not to do anything like that again. Exerting pressure for me to submit to her. She should be assured, in this situation, I couldn't possibly say it's a nuisance.
You said that to her? No, I didn't put it that way.
Really?
Your father said that's what you told him.
Are you saying he exaggerated, or are you implying that I'm lying?
No, that's not what I mean. So, you did say it? Sneaking around behind my back, what a cowardly act. Now that we're living together, you better apologize to my mom.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mom. I'll keep an eye out from now on. I ended up apologizing, swept along by the situation. And it turned into a 2-on-1 dynamic, isolating me in the house. Lucy seemed pleased with how things turned out, eating more eagerly than before. She must be enjoying her meal a lot. The next day, Lucy's blatant mistreatment began. She made lunch for both John and me, but only mine ended up in the trash. When I got home, she had prepared dinner but left no portion for me. Of course, my husband was aware of what his mother is doing. John, completely siding with his mother, seemed to be blaming me with his eyes. I couldn't expect any help in this situation. With my father-in-law gone, I felt utterly helpless, and a week passed in this state. The ongoing mistreatment left me feeling utterly drained. Some might endure this for years, but I lacked the patience. Finally, I found myself in a situation where I reluctantly had to ask Lucy for a favor. Mother-in-law, I'm sorry to ask, but could you please look after my daughter today?
Why? Don't you usually take her to your store?
I have to attend a networking event for work today. I can't bring her along.
Oh, she always cries when you're not around. I really don't want to.
Please, I'm begging you.
Fine, fine. You're such a troublesome daughter-in-law, aren't you?
I'm sorry. I bowed my head more times than I wanted to. Despite the unpleasant start to my day, I decided to just accept it. Leaving my daughter with Lucy was worrying. But I hoped she wouldn't be too harsh with her grandchild. I promised to return as soon as possible and left the house. That evening, I hurried home. While I hoped nothing was wrong, I wanted to make sure my daughter was safe. I'm back, sorry. I'm home now. As I called out to Lucy in the living room, she continued watching TV, giving me a brief, dismissive wave without turning around. She must be signaling not to talk to her while she's watching something good on TV. I look around the living room for my daughter. But she's not there. Thinking she might be in her crib in the bedroom, I head there next. However, Riley isn't there either. Maybe she's in one of the other two rooms. As I leave the bedroom, I hadn't noticed earlier due to rushing home and the TV noise, but now I faintly hear a baby crying. Focusing, I feel like the sound is coming from below. That's impossible, I shake my head. The first floor retail space, where my father Matthew used to run his car shop, is now in a skeleton state. I once thought of using it for my second apparel shop, but it's too big and renovation costs would be too high, so it's now a luxurious storage for shop and household items. But it's unthinkable that Riley would be there. Still, just to be sure, I go outside and head to the first floor. The crying becomes clearer, so I rush down. Reaching what used to be my father's office, I find Riley lying on a blanket spread over the concrete floor.
Riley!
I pick her up and check for any injuries. Finding none, I hurry back to the house.
What are you thinking, leaving my daughter like that? Stop being so loud. It's fine for a few hours in this weather. That's not okay at all. Why would you do something like that? She's too noisy. Couldn't hear the TV, so I had her go downstairs. You left my daughter alone for that reason? Why are you yelling so loud? I could hear you from outside.
Luckily, John arrived home at just the right moment. He's on his mother's side, but surely he'll side with me now that Riley's been treated this way. Babies are loud. I've thought about leaving her downstairs when she's crying at night. Thinking the same, huh? Like mother, like son. It seems this family is not reasonable. I can't stay another second.
I can't understand your thinking. Get out. What's wrong? Calm down. Why do we have to leave? This is my family home. It's only natural you leave.
Okay, I was harsh, and I took Riley downstairs, but is that reason enough to kick us out? Didn't you also have faults? Making it all our fault. Yeah, it's your family home, but who pays the rent? Me, didn't I tell you? So, this is my house now. You should be the one to leave. Talking to them is pointless. My anger turns to disbelief.
Fine, I'll leave. And let's get a divorce. All right. You don't care about my mom, and you're so hysterical. I didn't know you were like this. Let's divorce. Then, I'll have my dad prepare a proper rental agreement for here.
Go ahead. A wide property in the middle of the city with a luxurious first-floor storage. Thought it was a bit pricey at first, but $3,000 is totally fine if we can stay.
This place is really convenient, especially with the theater nearby.
They seem pleased to continue living here. Unbelievable, they don't seem to care much about the divorce. I'm furious, thinking I've wasted 3 years in this marriage. And I can't forgive Lucy for neglecting Riley. John is equally to blame for not seeing anything wrong with this. I packed my belongings and left the house with Riley. It's strange that I'm the one leaving, but I think this will shatter John's pride more effectively. I hope Lucy regrets it too. I called my father right away and explained the situation.
John did that?
Maybe he's been negatively influenced by Lucy since she started coming over after we moved. So, what are you planning to do?
I want you to draw up a lease agreement for John.
I see. Going that route, huh? Then he'll have no choice but to leave. My father understood my plan even before I explained everything. I guess our way of thinking is similar. After all, we are father and daughter. A month later, I was divorced from John and living in a monthly rental apartment with Riley. Now that the divorce was finalized, it was time to deliver the documents my father prepared to John and Lucy. Hey, you're here. Got the contract? It's been a while. Come in, please. I entered my family home, now guided by my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. It's an odd feeling. Entering my family home for the first time in a month, I noticed the furniture has been rearranged. And there were new knickknacks around. They seemed to be enjoying their life in this house. I sat on the living room sofa and placed the documents my father had prepared on the table. John picked them up and started reading. Soon, he pointed out a supposed mistake.
Hey, this is wrong. The rent is listed as $30,000. Oh, really? Such a mistake.
What?
The rent is $30,000?
That's correct.
Stop joking around. The rent is $3,000, right? You're trying to kick us out with a high rent, aren't you? But this is clearly way above the market rate. This contract is invalid. Stop messing around and bring a proper contract.
John thought he had seen through my plan, looking triumphant. Unfortunately for him, there's no mistake in the document, it's exactly as intended. No mistake here.
The whole building and this vast property. Plus, the first floor is a commercial space, not a residence. Commercial rent is generally higher than residential. So, renting it all comes to $30,000. That's the market rate around here. What? Don't joke. We're only renting the living space upstairs. We have some stuff on the first floor, but we'll move it.
That's not possible.
My father said if he rents out this place, it has to be the whole thing, not parts of it. That makes sense, right? Tenants for the first floor would be hard to find if strangers lived upstairs. We could use this house because of my relationship with my father. Now that we're divorced and strangers, such whims won't work. You'll have to pay the market rate. But we've been paying $3,000 until now.
No, you haven't.
Until now, the rent was $0. My father said I could use the place as I wanted, and I didn't have to pay. It's like borrowing something for free. I plan to give him about $10,000 a year for property taxes. If I have to put a number on it, maybe the rent was about $10,000 a year? Rent $0? That can't be right. The rent is $3,000.
That was a lie. You have such high pride.
I thought you'd be hurt if I said we're living here for free. Don't misunderstand. I didn't pocket the money. The supposed $3,000 rent was being saved. I also contributed $3,000 each month, saving $6,000 a month together. What were you saving all that money for? The residential space here is a 3-bedroom, and around here, that's worth about $800,000. So, I was planning to wait until we had saved a substantial amount of money. Then, at the right time, I would tell you the truth and discuss whether to give the saved money to my father. Then it won't just be because of my father's generosity that we're living here, right? I never heard such a story. I kept it from you because I knew you'd be unnecessarily hurt knowing we're living here for free. I was waiting for the right time to tell you, after saving enough money, to discuss with you whether to give it to my father. I used to think your pride was attractive, but it's just troublesome when it's too much. We've been living here for over half a year, about 10 months, right? What happened to all the money we saved so far? Should be about $60,000, right? Don't worry. I haven't done anything wrong. The saved money is included in the divorce settlement.
In the divorce settlement, the supposed rent savings of $60,000 and another $40,000 in joint savings, totaling $100,000, were split in half. So, John received $50,000. The savings from before our marriage weren't that substantial. Plus, my ex-husband John, being a system engineer, earned a decent salary, but we're talking a few tens of thousands of dollars. With this, even if they sign the lease, they'll have to leave in 2 or 3 months. Realizing he was being cornered into a situation where they'd be forced out, John dropped the documents he was holding onto the floor.
Hey, does this mean we have to leave? Is that what this is about? I sold my parents' house. I have some of my husband's money. I can manage about $140,000, but can't we work something out with that?
$140,000 is a considerable amount of money. But it would evaporate instantly against a $30,000 monthly payment. Lucy, looking deflated, was shaking John, who seemed to have lost his strength. They couldn't believe they had to leave such a prime location in the city. No matter how much Lucy pleaded with John, the situation wouldn't change, they had to leave the house. If they wanted to change this situation, they were asking the wrong person for help.
Hey, Ava! Can't you do something? Please, Can't we just rent the living space for $3,000 a month?
Lucy begged, lowering her head. But considering how they treated my daughter and me, it's too late for such requests.
No. If you're renting, it's the whole building and property. We won't accept anything else. If you're not signing the contract now, please leave by the end of the month.
The end of the month?
That's only about 2 weeks away. Can't you wait 2 or 3 months? We need to find a place to move to. Do you even understand what you're saying? Asking to stay in a house with a $30,000 rent for 2 or 3 months is like asking for $60,000 to $90,000.
Lucy, who had been assertive until now, slumped back into the sofa, her energy seemingly drained.
If you don't leave by the end of the month, I'll have to report you for trespassing or unlawful occupation. You choose.
I picked up the contract John had dropped and left the house, leaving my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law behind, looking shell-shocked. By the end of the month, they had left the house. Since Lucy sold her own family home when she moved in, they apparently moved to a suburb. They're away from the city now, but John still works, and Lucy had said she had $140,000 in savings. Their lifestyle shouldn't be too affected. However, for my prideful ex-husband, being outsmarted and driven out of the city center by me and my father must have shattered his pride. He might be smart as a system engineer, but he couldn't match the cunning of a business owner. Lucy sold her family home thinking she could live in the city center. Does this mean that for my former mother-in-law the value of popular theater was greater than her own family home? The theater might be great, but I think she'll regret her decision later. They left, so I moved back into my family home. My father still insists I don't need to pay rent, but I feel it's only right to give him something, so I pay $1,600 a month. A car shop owned by a friend of my father's moved into the first-floor tenant space. It's mostly men working there, so I feel like it's good security. Riley has started crawling. It seems like childcare is about to get more challenging as she becomes more active. Watching her crawl energetically, I'm motivated to work even harder.